Even the best animated shows have a few blink and you'll miss it mistakes. Here are some little animation bloopers in Bluey that you probably missed. In the Magic Xylophone, Bandit is caught in all kinds of trouble thanks to Bluey and Bingo's xylophone spells. At one point, while he's trying to catch Bluey and Bingo in the front yard, random clothes and accessories fly everywhere in the chaos. But fast forward a bit, and when Bandit returns with Gnome Bluey, everything's mysteriously clean. No clothes, no mess, nothing. It's like the yard did a self-tidy up. Did the animators think we wouldn't notice? Well, it's just one of those funny little details that make you go, huh? Now onto Markets, where Bluey spends the episode missing a tooth, or at least that's what we're told. Here's the thing, her character model doesn't actually show a missing tooth until she loses another one at the end of the episode. So she's supposedly gap-toothed, but her grin stays the same until, poof, she's suddenly missing two. Did the gap in her teeth decide to play hide and seek? Who knows? It's a small blip in the animation, but a funny one when you spot it, much like this next one when Socks gets warped. Picture this. Bluey, Muffin, and Socks are rushing around at the family BBQ, excitedly running to see Bingo, but take a closer look at Socks. Her body somehow gets layered under her snout and front leg. It's a blink and miss it kind of glitch, but once you see it, it's hard to unsee. Poor Socks looks like she's accidentally stumbled into some cartoon warping. Somehow things get more absurd in the weekend episode, where Bandit is having his quiet moment on the toilet. He is casually scrolling through his phone, but when he tells Bluey she can wait outside, he takes one hand off and the phone flips by itself. It's a small mistake, but it's as if Bandit's phone suddenly became self-aware. Did it decide to flip for him? Maybe he's got a hands-free feature we don't know about. Moving on, we have the episode The Creek. Bluey, being her adventurous self, slips on a mossy rock and lands in the water. You'd expect her to come up soaked, right? Nope. She pops up completely dry like her fur just naturally repels water. No drips, no splashes, nothing. Apparently she's got waterproof fur. A little animation oversight, but it almost adds to the show's magical feel. In the Bluey world, anything is possible. Here's another fun one you definitely didn't notice. In the takeaway episode, as Bandit enters the takeaway shop for the first time, we get a quick glimpse of Bingo blinking. But if you look closely, even when her eyes close, one of her pupils stays visible for just a second. It's like her pupil's trying to peek out, curious about all the commotion. This little slip almost makes Bingo look even more mischievous. After all, who doesn't want to keep an eye on everything? But wait, it gets even crazier. You see, in the episode Bob Bilby, we get a sweet scene with Bentley and Missy opening the kindy door to let the parents in. But suddenly, they're no longer at the door. They're magically sitting with the rest of their classmates in the very next shot. It's like they teleported across the room. This tiny glitch probably slipped right by, especially since everyone is focused on Bob Bilby's grand adventure, but we caught it. Next up is a glitch that happens so fast it's almost impossible to spot. In Horsey Ride, when Muffin and her dad, Stripe, walk up to the altar, Bandit is there, looking festive. But for a split second, the black markings on Bandit's face disappear. It's like he's got a disappearing magic trick of his own going on. A tiny blip, but one that gives us an extra reason to smile at the little quirks that make Bluey unique. But I'm certain most of you missed it though. This next error, however, is much more visible. In the episode Fruit Bat, Chili's hockey stick gets wrapped with tape when it first appears, giving it that well-used look, but in the very next shot, the tape's completely gone. Did she decide to rip it off for a better grip mid-play? Or maybe it's a little animation slip-up. Either way, it's one of those small moments that add to Bluey's lovable real-life meets fantasy vibe. Moving on, we have Keepy Uppy. At one point, Bluey's bed is stripped bare. No pillow, no bedclothes, just a blue fitted sheet. Did Mom and Dad decide to pop everything in the wash all at once? Maybe, or maybe it's just a small detail the animators left out. Either way, this little oversight gives us a fun, relatable glimpse into the sometimes chaotic life of the healers, so it might not be an error after all. This one's for the beach episode fans. Remember when Bluey is playfully matching her steps to Chili's paw prints in the sand? At one point though, one of Chili's paw prints just vanishes from the lineup. And to make it even better, when Bluey hops into the spot where the paw print should be, she doesn't leave a new one behind. It's like the beach itself decided to play a little trick. You'll only notice this if you pay attention, but it is clear this wasn't done intentionally. It's straight up an animation mistake, but I wonder why the animators didn't pick up on this, because because it is pretty obvious. Moving on, in the episode Asparagus, things get a little wild with the family's pretend animal game. At one point, when Chili and Bingo are dragging Pat through the grass, one of Bingo's hands accidentally clips through Pat's ankle. A little later, as Bandit turns to show off his peacock tail, his black back patch magically appears on his chest for a split second. Maybe someone decided to change the costume mid-game, or maybe the animators were having as much fun as the healers. We'll never know. In the episode Camping, we get a heartwarming campfire scene, but there are a couple of tiny glitches. For one, Stripe suddenly sports 2 spots on his face when he's supposed to have just 1, and as he's drifting off, one of his eyelids closes upside down. A small hiccup, but it almost gives Stripe a quirky, sleepy face look, adding to the cozy scene around the fire. The eye thing was pretty funny though. Imagine this: Muffin, in all her chaotic glory, is driving a pretend car in the episode The Sleepover, but blink and you'll miss it. There's a split-second frame where the car door is completely missing. It's like the animation forgot to put it back in place. Just one of those funny details that makes Muffin's wild ride even wilder. But things get a little more goofy in the episode Fairies. Bandit gets caught up in a fairy magic dance while carrying Bingo, but as he spins around, his black face mask suddenly splits in half and his nose momentarily disconnects. And if that weren't enough, Bingo's snout and Bandit's arm clip through each other. It's a series of animation errors all happening at once, but it almost feels like the fairies are at work, making the whole scene even more hilariously chaotic. In the episode Trains, Bluey's stuffed friend Mr. Cotton Socks has a quick moment of identity confusion. Bluey lovingly hands Mr. Cotton Socks over to Bingo, and Bingo says,
"Fix, fix, fix. There, she's all better."
As if Mr. Cotton Socks were a she. A small line mix-up, but a funny one, especially since Bingo is usually so attentive to little details. Well, that's a reminder that even in the world of play, anything goes. Next up, in the episode Dad Baby, we have a blink and you miss it kind of mistake. When Bluey manages to pull Bingo out during a game, there's a frame where her usual white belly patch is just missing. It's almost like her belly went undercover for a second. A tiny slip in the animation that might have slipped right by if you weren't watching closely. The episode Sticky Gecko has some insane errors that deserve a spot of their own. It seems the family's staircase has a mind of its own. After Chili checks out Bingo's not so clean teeth, the staircase appears in a completely different spot, way over to the right. And if that's not strange enough, a rope above Chili's head suddenly shifts positions too. It's like the house itself decided to join in the fun. I guess the animators were feeling lazy that day because everything seems to have a mind of its own. In the episode Rug Island, Bandit opens a present for the girls, and we should be able to see the poinciana tree nearby, but oddly, it's missing from the scene. It's as if the tree decided to take a little break. This simple background detail isn't a huge deal, but it's quite funny for fans who noticed its sudden disappearance from an otherwise familiar setting. Next up in the episode Road Trip, the healers are driving down the road, and suddenly, the gray nomads they'd passed earlier catch up to them at the service station. Biscuits! But here's the weird part. The healers had been traveling faster, so how did the nomads get there first? It's either a glitch or maybe it was another group of nomads that had passed them. Either way, it's a funny mix-up that adds some mystery to the plot of the episode. Now, in Bin Night, we get a look at the healer family's routine of putting out the bins. But if you pay attention to the moon phases, things get a little wacky. Bluey mentions that both bins are collected on full, half, and new moon nights, which would mean weekly collections. Yet the episode shows the moon phases in the following order: third quarter, waning gibbous; full, waxing gibbous; third quarter, and waxing crescent. Not exactly how the moon actually works. It's a quirky error, but I guess they left it there because they thought most people wouldn't notice. I mean, it's a kid's show. On to the next slip up. In the episode The Quiet Game, Cornelius is trying to impress his girlfriend by tossing $1 into a homeless dog's hat. But as they walk away, the dollar buck strangely floats to the top of the screen, in front of the hat. It's almost like the dollar buck decided it wanted the spotlight. It's a quick little mistake, but it adds an extra layer of silliness to Cornelius's romantic gesture. Imagine this: you're watching Bluey, and Bandit is about to touch the water, but just before he actually gets in, he completely vanishes for a second. It's as if he pulled off an impressive invisible dive trick. A small animation hiccup, but one that gives Bandit's swim an unexpected twist. Moving on, in the episode Pass the Parcel, when Pat gives Lila one of Chucky's presents, something strange happens. Part of Lila's ear fur, which is supposed to be in front of her arm, suddenly clips behind it for just a moment. It's like her ear has a mind of its own, jumping around from one place to another. A quick blip for those who noticed, but it brings a bit of unintentional humor to the gift-giving moment. Next up in the episode Facey Talk, we have a classic case of now you see them, now you don't. When Muffin drops Stripe's phone from the balcony, the footage briefly shows the balcony in view, but strangely, Muffin, Stripe, and Trixie, who were standing on the balcony, are nowhere to be seen in the camera's capture. Did they all take a quick step back? Or maybe the phone just forgot to record them? At this point, I think the animators are just messing with us. But the glitch makes Muffin's accidental video even more hilarious. Now this next mistake is straight up goofy. In the episode, Tina, Bandit, and Chili team up to move Tina into the trunk. During this scene, if you watch closely, the dark brown fur on Chili's face and ears briefly overlaps her lighter colored fur, creating a funny little overlap effect. It's almost as if her face wanted an extra layer for dramatic effect. Just a tiny visual blip. In fact, I'm almost 100% sure you didn't notice it at first. Moving on, in the episode Smoochy Kiss, we get a look at the healer's laundry room, where there's an unexpected little switcheroo. The taps on the laundry tub start with hot on the left and cold on the right, but later in the episode, they've swapped places. Now hot's on the right and cold's on the left. Either the healers have some very active plumbing, or the animators got their taps mixed up. It's something you wouldn't notice if you're not overly attentive, so I wouldn't blame you if you didn't see it. And moving on to our next error. In the episode Stories, Calypso has a minor but noticeable glitch while leading the class. When the kids greet Major Tom with a big "Hi, Major Tom," there's a quick moment where Calypso's mouth movement causes the fur on her cheek to glitch slightly. It's such a tiny detail, but it gives the impression that Calypso's cheek might be as animated as her personality. Just a brief hiccup in an otherwise heartfelt classroom scene. For this one, we have to go back to the episode Takeaway, where we get a small but fun character mix-up. The Takeaway lady first appears as if she has pure white fur, but when she steps outside, the fur on her face and head suddenly shifts to a grayish color. It's almost like she's been caught with a new dye job in between scenes. It's a quick and quirky animation error that adds to the energy of the scene. Honestly, it seems some of these errors make the show even more interesting. There's another error in the episode Bob Bilby that you might have missed. You see, there's a moment outside the supermarket where Bluey, Bingo, and Chili are watching the television. In the background, we can spot Stripe with Trixie, but Stripe's fur color has suddenly turned a shade of maroon. Later on at the fireworks scene, Stripe is back to his regular coloring, actually confirming the earlier version was an animation mix-up. It's a small error, but one that gives us a funny alternate universe moment for Stripe. Next up in the episode Cricket, there is a heartwarming moment where Jack hugs his mom as she picks him up from school. But if you look closely, Jack's hug is a bit off. Instead of wrapping his arms around his mom as you'd expect, both his arms are placed straight in front of her. It's almost as if Jack forgot to actually hug and opted for a more mannequin-like gesture. And to add to this unusual moment, one of his signature spots completely disappears during the hug. Well, someone wasn't doing their job properly, but it just makes the whole scene even more hilarious. Moving on, this next mistake happened so fast you'd have to pause the show to actually see it. In the TV Shop episode, between 3:18 and 3:18:08, 3 jars of protein powder on an end cap display mysteriously disappear. One moment they're there, stacked neatly. The next moment, they're simply gone. Whether it was the work of an overly ambitious shopper or a simple animation oversight, it's an amusing little vanishing act. This detail might slip right by if you're focused on the main characters. I mean, no one really pays attention to the background, so they managed to get away with this one. Moving on, in the episode Cubby, Bingo proudly says,
I'm glad we have an art room.
Grammatically speaking, this should be, I'm glad we have an art room. It's a tiny language hiccup, but one that gives a lot of charm to Bingo's character. At her age, it's completely understandable, and you could even say that the creators intentionally kept this line to show that Bingo is still a child learning how to speak. So I guess using a instead of an is a small slip that could just be Bingo speaking in her own sweet, imperfect way, adding a touch of realism to her character. The Cricket episode brings us another little animation mishap, this time with Frank. When Chili calls the kids over for lunch, we see Frank sitting at the table with the other adults. But here's the strange part. His legs don't line up with his body. Instead, they appear slightly out of place, creating a detached illusion that makes him look like he's levitating or perhaps sitting in a very unusual purposeful way. I mean, at this point, it's as if the creators want is to notice these mistakes. If you thought that was obvious, just wait. In the episode Feather Wand, there's a quick but funny moment when Bingo rolls a ball down the stairs. As she turns her head, her snout appears to shift in a strange, almost stretched way. This one looks more like an animation smear, a technique used to smooth out fast movements, rather than a mistake. But here it creates a goofy visual where Bingo's snout looks momentarily distorted. You wouldn't catch this if you're not paying attention, but once you spot it, it's hard to ignore that Bingo stretch that gives her face a funny twist. Now, if you remember Granny's, you might recall Bluey and Bingo's toy car zooming around as they played. But if you pause when they drive into the sandpit, you'll notice the underside of their car seems to have a solid bottom. This doesn't match the usual design, which is open to let them push with their feet. It's a minor continuity slip, but it's amusing to think the car had a sudden renovation for that one moment. A tiny detail, yet for viewers with an eagle eye, it's another unexpected treat hidden in the fun. Moving on, we have another mistake in the circus episode, where Coco has a line about telling someone
Not to be mean to that lion.
For a split second, her eyebrows disappear, leaving her face with a strange, almost blank expression. You see, Coco's eyebrows play a big part in her expressions, so this glitch is oddly noticeable when you're looking for it. It's another small, easily missed blip, but it gives Coco an unusual look, as if she's somehow frozen mid-sentence before her eyebrows pop back on. In the episode Dance Mode, Chili tugs on Bandit's tail, and just as he turns him around, something weird happens. Bandit's forehead fur vanishes for a split second. His usual face suddenly looks oddly smooth, like someone edited out his fur for just that one frame. It's quick, and I bet most of you didn't even spot it, but if you did, it adds a funny twist to the whole scene. Who knows, maybe Bandit lost his fur while spinning. Another mystery we'll never solve. Last but definitely not least, in the episode The Claw, we see a continuity goof with Bandit's knees. At home, Bandit accidentally bumps his left knee. Everything looks fine at first, but in the next scene at the dinner table, his bandage is somehow swapped to his right knee. It's an amusing mistake that makes you wonder if Bandit had a second knee injury, or if the bandage had a mind of its own. These small mistakes don't take away from Bluey's charm. In fact, they add a little extra fun for those who catch them. If you notice any errors we missed, drop them in the comments. Don't forget to drop a like if you enjoyed the video and subscribe to this channel. And as always, see you all in the next video.